Folks, we are back here in the main room. We're just waiting for our organizing and political director, Jarvis, is going to join us in just a second to get started talking about campaign services. Jarvis, whenever you're ready.
I'm here.
Okay.
So thank you, everyone. Taylor and myself will speak to you about the exciting world of campaign services and what we do with campaign services. I'm going to share little tidbits of what we do and also share some stories. Lala always tells me my stories, my political stories from 15 years of political organizing and campaigns could be turned into a Netflix series or 2 or 3 Netflix series. I don't know. It might be true. So I will go share some stories without names, of course, and tell you a little bit to go under the hood of what we do with campaign services. But I'm going to start with a quote. We talked about Prince a lot, but I know Lace, and one of my favorite recording artists of all time, goes by the name of Nina Simone. So I will give a quote from Nina Simone before Prince is great. Nina Simone is equally great. And her quote, and she was also not only, she's known as a recording artist, but she's equally known as a political activist. And her quote is, did you know that the human voice is not only a pure instrument, that it has no other instrument has. It's like being between the keys of a piano. So Nina Simone not only understood that her power as a recording artist, she understood using her voice to really impact the community, especially in the important times of the civil rights movement. When she was a leading voice in the civil rights movement, and she risked political capital, she risked making a good deal of funds, and she didn't care about making money. She truly cared about the commitment and the forward movement of African Americans across this country. So I just wanted to give some respect and a quote from Nina Simone before we start our presentation. So a little bit about our highlights. Can we go to the next slide with highlights? Thank you. Our highlights from 2021. We had some exciting times working in Virginia in 2021. We hosted the first of its kind for Sister District. We hosted media trainings with Josh Cole and Fanal Norton. So your question is, what is media training? Dealing with press and dealing with reporters, it can be very difficult. I had a story with one of my candidates that I work for. He did something, I'll just be honest, very stupid. And reporters were calling me, and I called one of my friends that worked for the New York Times. I said, all these reporters are calling me. I don't want to pick up the phone. And she asked me a question. She said, Jarvis, are those reporters going to help you? And I had to think about it. I said, no, they're not going to help me. So she said, don't pick up the phone. She said, the worst thing on the story will be is we were unavailable for comment. And we finally worked with the candidate. We finally created a communication strategy for the not very smart thing that he did. And we eventually got ahead of the story. We had a great communication strategy. And then he had a one-on-one with a TV station to discuss what happened. And we won the campaign by 6 points. So it tells you the power of dealing with the media. And the most important is relationships. I can call a friend from the New York Times. I can call a friend that works for CNN. I can call a friend that works for Huffington Post because I have relationships with those people, and we have a relationship of trust. Meaning, they tell me something, it's not going to get out. I tell them something, I have to trust that I will be their source, and it's not going to get out to anyone else. And Liz can tell you the importance of having relationships with the media and having the best relationships possible. But we hosted media trainings with Fanal Norton, who was a very green candidate that did not know anything about dealing with press. So I worked with her step by step about what the dealing with press and all about earned media strategies. What's earned media? Earned media is free publication. When you see a story about a reporter, a positive story about about a candidate or elected official, how did that positive story? It's someone like me, and someone like Liz, and someone else behind the scenes under the hood that's writing that story, pitching the story to the reporter. And I have probably pitched, and I worked in New York media, I have pitched hundreds and hundreds of stories to reporters about my candidate or about the elected official I was working for at the time. But I wouldn't pitch a reporter I didn't have a relationship. So if I pitch that story to them, I know 9 times out of 10, they will do their best with their editor to put that story out there. And reporters, for the most part, are lazy. So I usually do all the information and research for the reporter. So when I send them that press packet or the media packet, dealing with that story or dealing with that person or dealing with that issue that happened, then the story is already always written for you. So I'll give a quick story. A senator that I was working for, we were campaigning at the train station, and a Trump supporter called the police on the senator. He was a senator. She called the police on the senator because she just, I guess she felt threatened of someone passing out campaign items at a train station. So she called the police on the senator. Police came. They didn't do anything because they knew the senator already. And I said, this is a good story. So we found out the Trump supporter's name. And I talked to my friend from CNN. I talked to my friend from the New York Times. I talked to even my friend from Fox News. And it became an international story about African Americans having a long history of the cops being called on them for not doing anything but living while black. And it became one of the biggest stories in New York City media for that one candidate and us turning that Trump supporter calling the police on the candidate into an international story that got so many hits on our website. We raised thousands and thousands of dollars off of one story, and me having a forward thinking mind of turning that Trump supporter into a person that was on the cover of the New York Post, which is a conservative newspaper, but they're sensationalized journalism. I even have relations with the New York Post, even though they're more conservative. I know what type of stories that the New York Post writes. So I give them what they want. I say, you want some sensationalized journalism? Here you go, New York Post. And they ran with it. So that's a prime example of using something that's negative to something positive for your candidate. Writing campaign plans and field plans. You do not start any campaign without writing something down first. Neil will tell you, if it's not written down, it does not exist. My first job out of college, I was a community organizer. The first thing I ever learned at organizing training was Jarvis, write everything down. Do not trust your memory. If it's not written down, it does not exist. I have not wrote a campaign plan that was less than 50 pages because it encompasses, it's like the Walmart. You're going into Walmart. I'm going to cover communication. I'm going to cover digital. I'm going to cover data. I'm going to cover grassroots organizing. I'm going to cover everything in that one plan. I'm going to have a timeline. I'm going to have a budget. I'm going to have everything in that plan. It's going to take me about 4 to 5 days. It's almost like writing a small book. It takes that much time. And for Virginia, for example, I wrote campaign plans for Ross Tyler and various other GOTV plans. And the campaign GOTV plan I wrote for Ross Tyler, for example, was 30, 35 pages. And it took me 5, 6 hours just to write that plan. So before you start any campaign, if I'm sitting down with a candidate or consulting a candidate, the first thing I will tell them is, I can't tell you anything until we write a plan first. And then we can use that plan as something that we use the entire campaign. And campaign plans change all the time. So if I'm writing a campaign plan, I know I'm going to look at that campaign plan 3 or 4 times a day and make hundreds and hundreds of changes based on what's happened. Communication changes, budgets changes, everything changes on the campaign. It's organized chaos. So I always know quick chaos is going to happen, but I'm going to be organized around that chaos. Paid media plans, very important to have a paid media plan and understanding paid media. For example, Wendy Goditis campaign, her campaign manager was having a consulting call with telling myself for candidate services. And she said the TV buy was X number of dollars. And I said, no, it's too much. You need to put X number of dollars into field, door knocking, phone banking if you want to win this campaign. TV commercials are great, but TV commercials do not win campaigns. They look good, they're smiling, they have a baby in their hands, but it's not going to win a campaign. It's just good at promoting and marketing and building a brand of your candidate, but it's not going to win a campaign. So she actually listened to us and she took some funds out from their media buy, and she didn't understand TV buy. So the consultant just said, sign this document, pay for the media buy. I was like, when are what station is going to run on Lifetime, going to run on the network? She's like, I don't know, I never did a media buy before. I said, I have. So this is what you need to do, and this is what you need to tell the consultant, because the consultant gives you advice, but they just can't tell you to sign something, because at the end of the day, they're going to make a lot of money off this media buy. But at the end of the day, if she wins or loses, they're still going to make $200,000 off this media buy or whatever. So she listened to us. They changed their campaign plan based on taking out X number of dollars out of the paid media plan. And you said Wendy Goditis won her campaign by this a small percentage of voters, because her campaign manager, extremely smart, extremely gifted, and she understands the power of understanding field and putting most of your power and funding into door knocking and phone banking, because that's what wins campaign. Analyzing universes and targeting plans. That's something we did a lot. We analyzed and did voter contact strategies with our 12 endorsed candidates more than anything else for campaign services by far. So Taylor and Taylor is a field whiz. As I told so many people on this call, Taylor was the field manager, voter contact strategist, data expert, social worker, psychologist, and everything else under the sun. So the question is, how do you analyze universes? So we went into Van, we looked at the universes based on the number of voters, based on age, based on ethnicity, and everything else to make sure we talk to the right voters. I can have the best voter contact strategy in the world, but I also have to analyze the voters to talk to the right voters at the right time with the right message. If I'm not doing those 2-3 things, I'm planning to lose. I gotta have the right message to that right voter at the right time. And that's very important that you analyze the data. And you also look at when was the last time that person voted? Or did they vote 3 out of the last 5 elections? Did they vote on 4 out of the last 6 elections? That's very important. They normally vote on general elections versus primary elections. Those are very important data points that we use when we analyze strategy. When I work with Pete's campaign in South Carolina, for example, they don't have ethnicity or various other things on voter files for obvious reasons. South Carolina is a very red state. So I had to work with the data manager who's at Facebook now to analyze the vote data. It took us about 3 months to analyze the vote data. Finally, when we can have vote data based on ethnicity and various other demographics, but it took us 3 months just to put that information together with the thousands of voters in South Carolina. We also secure high-profile surrogates, including congressional members, for fundraisers for candidates, including Brianna Soul, who she did not have a finance director or fundraiser at the beginning of the campaign. So I served as a de facto fundraiser for Brianna Sewell. I helped write their finance plan. I helped them look over their budget, and then also helped her plan her first fundraising event with various congressional members in Virginia, and she was very happy. And I used my experience for first time I worked on a presidential campaign. I worked for President Obama. I was a fundraiser, and I raised funds all across the country. So I used my experience, my years and years of experience with fundraising, to just go deep dive and help Brianna. I knew her campaign manager, and I had fundraising experience, and Brianna was a first-time candidate. So it took me about 2 months before they found the finance director, just to give them all of my knowledge of fundraising to help her build. And she broke records for fundraising in her district. She's a very, very great fundraiser. But it took us working together with her in the beginning to get her a nice fundraising plan. Again, I'm not going to start a fundraising program. Lindsay will tell you, you can't start fundraising without having a plan first and having a budget and then going backwards from election. Very important. We send weekly candidate services newsletter, and we also hosted GOTV trainings for our campaign. GOTV is the most important part of the campaign. It's taking all the voters. Let's say we start phone banking in May, and sometimes some volunteers act like, Jarvis, a lot of these numbers are wrong. I have never worked on a campaign. I have worked in 16 states with organizing the campaign. I have never found a voter file that did not have at least 30% bad numbers. It's impossible to have a perfect voter file. But it's our job as volunteers and for a campaign to help clean the list, take out the bad numbers, take out the people that moved, take out the people that said no, take out the crazy Trump people, take out the people, take out so many people, and we're cleaning the list until we get all the way to GOTV. When we have a really good list, we don't have that many bad numbers, and that really helps us save time. The 3 most important parts of the campaign is time, people, and money. The most important is time. I can get more people, I can get more money, but I can never get more time. And volunteers, what you do in the beginning of the campaign with phone banking, even though you're taking out all the bad numbers, and it could be frustrating at times, it's extremely important, because it's going to take you all the way to GOTV when we're not calling those bad numbers again. And we're saving time to focus on calling voters to get them out to vote and to help the candidate win and run the best GOTV program possible. So I'm gonna go to the next slide about who we are, and Taylor's gonna give a little bit overview of who we are with campaign service.
Yeah, so Jarvis and I, after Jarvis's great overview of what we accomplished in 2021, it's simple to say that we are free consultants for these campaigns. We offer biweekly calls with our campaign managers, access to us with the candidates to ensure that they feel comfortable with every aspect of their campaign. Maybe they need a little help being or explaining different portions that their consultants are selling them. And that's what we're here to do, just offer our free services with our 15 plus years of experience to these individuals.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So I'm go over a little bit about what we do and share some stories. I'm not going to share any names, but I'm going to share some stories on what we do. Again, I talked about time, people, and money and messaging. For example, 2022 is looking a lot like 2012 when President Obama ran for re-election. In 2008, it was change we believe in, bringing new ideals to the table. Some guy that you can even pronounce his name that's running for president of the United States, that's making history, who's from Chicago like myself, I always throw that in. In 2012, President Obama was more on the defensive. We didn't do good in the midterm election. He was more on the defensive. The Democrats, we won, President Biden won, of course, he beat Trump. And we have the Senate majority, but the Senate majority and the House majority is very slim. And now, similar to Virginia, we're back on the defensive. So, in anyone that understands war or Art of War, read the Art of War, you don't want to be on the defensive. You want to change your defensive and change it to the offensive. So that's important with Democrat and messaging. Messaging is very important, but as Gabby will tell you, messaging has to be local. If I'm speaking, for instance, if I'm in Ross Tyler's district, I'm going to talk about broadband access. Because she has thousands of children in her district that simply did not go to school or have e-learning because they could not afford a computer. They did not have broadband access, and the public libraries were closed. So thousands of, and I'm speaking, and everyone that's hearing me say this message, it goes to your heart because you're thinking about those kids that did not go to school for a whole year because they couldn't afford it or they didn't have broadband access. And we have to have that same message in 2022, speaking locally about stuff that people value. If I'm hosting a campaign training, I'm going on the body, talking about the body. Your hand is your capacity, your gut is your interest, your foot is your commitment, your head is your issues, and your heart is what you value. I'm going to always start with the heart first because that's what you value. And as I'm speaking to you about Ross Tyler and those kids, it's going to more to your heart because you're thinking about those poor kids that did not go to school for a whole year, that they didn't have broadband access. And you have these stories all over the United States, in Michigan and Detroit. I could talk about workforce development in Detroit, and I can talk about immigration in Arizona, but I got to go uber local to talk about issues that person, it's almost like the Janet Jackson song, "What have you done for me lately?" And that's what the voter wants to know. You can talk about all the policy you want and talk about all the great things that you have done. That does not matter to the average voter. The average voter wants to know, what have you done for me lately? And what value? I value something. I care about gun safety because there's so many kids in my neighborhood that have been shot. So you want to talk about gun safety? I care about affordable childcare because I'm a single mother that only makes $25,000 a year. So I care about the importance of free childcare. I care about increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour because I make $12 an hour, but my rent is $500 a month. You got to talk about those issues. Even like Deborah Gardner, for example, we helped her talk about issues such as childcare, which is very important to certain communities, free childcare, because the average single mother cannot afford to pay a daycare center $15 to $20 an hour if they only making $12 an hour. So that's very important that we understand the community, have a plan for that community before we go in. And that goes with grassroots organizing. If I'm writing a campaign plan, I'm going to have a field plan with the numbers. We need to knock on X number of doors to win. This is our win number. But before I had a win number, I need a community organizing plan. I need to target seniors. I need to target Asian Americans. I need to target African Americans. I need to have a story and issues and message that values each of those communities, going from seniors to young people and back again. That's very important. So if I don't have a message, I can have the best voter contact strategy possible. I can have an army of 200 people, but if that person going to the door speaking about some boilerplate issue that someone was too lazy to write, then I'm not going to have the best field strategy possible. But I'm going to door speaking from someone, oh, the X person lives in your neighborhood. She asked me to come to your door to speak about broadband access in your community because we know these young people deserve someone that actually cares about them having the best education possible. That's the big difference, just speaking about, oh, education, this person is going to help you go to college and high school. How? You're not really speaking to me. You're speaking about something that's high level. You need to speak to me in the heart about something that matters. So campaign planning is very important. Communications and research. And I'm just going over all the aspects of campaign services that we provide. Research, opposition research. Sometimes you have to go negative. That's part of the business that we're in. I was running as a field director and political director for a congressional member running in a primary against another congressional member. Well, a former congressional member. We found out when she was a congressional member, she voted against Obama 88 times. She didn't actually vote against Obama, but it was bills that Obama wanted to pass. But she voted against it, so we turned that in. She voted 88. Even though she endorsed Obama, she had pictures with Obama. We said she voted 88 times against Obama. And it became 88 radio spots, TV spots, door knocking, phone banking. And this is towards the end. You don't go negative until you talk about yourself. You should not go negative in the beginning. You go negative at the end if you have to do it. That's the only time you go negative. And the 88 worked because most of the 80% of those we were going to in the call, they're like, oh, she voted 88 times against Obama. I don't like that. We were like, yeah, we don't like. That's why you need to vote for our candidate. So sometimes you have to, and that takes opposition research and that takes time. Finance and fundraising, digital. We're in a world of Facebook, we're in a world of Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, and everything else under the sun. And now we're in a business where we have to buy ads. I worked with several campaigns where we had IP targeted. IP target is I'm looking at everyone's computer and I'm looking at the top 10 websites that you have. Maybe it's a website with clothing, maybe it's a website about gun safety. We're looking at those top 10 websites and we're using the top 10 websites to communicate with you based on issues that you value, based on your website that you go to. That's called IP target. So that's something that's very important. It's not even the future, it's something that's happening now with campaigns. If you're fundraising, I don't send out a fundraising email unless it has 3 clicks, meaning I'm going to have 3 links to the fundraise to the ActBlue site. It's going to be in the beginning, it's going to be in the middle, and it's going to be at the PS. Why you say PS? Because people look at PS and they look at Dear more than anything else. And if I'm sending out a fundraising act, I always have you and your. Because when you say you, again, it feels like we're talking to you directly. It's something that you value. Field, grassroots, and voter contact strategies, also very important. It also starts with grassroots organizing. When I was working for Peter, South Carolina, I had over 30 roundtable discussions. I had roundtable discussions about education, about broadband access, about water, about water, about jobs in certain communities, and so on and so on. For example, in one part of South Carolina, close to Hilton Head, it's a small county called Allendale with about 2,600 people out there. Most of those people go to work in Hilton Head. They take the bus 2 hours each way. So 4 hours out of their day is spent going to work to make $15 an hour. So Pete and I had a roundtable discussion about increasing the minimum wage and about workers' rights because we knew about that community. I had roundtable discussions for a month before I even brought Pete to the community. So when he came to the community, the people already liked Pete because they said, your team have been talking to me for over a month about issues that I value. So grassroots organizing is so key. Paid media, as I told you with paid media, it's not as important as door knocking and phone banking, but it's part of campaign strategy. So I have wrote commercials. I had a commercial that I wrote for a judge. I found out, I said, oh, you're a black belt? And right, he said, yeah, I'm a black belt in Taekwondo. So we had a commercial with him as the judge and him slapping a piece of wood, and it became a very popular commercial. So you saw a judge that you see, oh, he's a judge, but he's like the Karate Kid now with Cobra Kai or something with that. Radio spots, it's not, again, it's not as important, but it's something that'll help build your brand. Managing your time is very important. As I work with a candidate, I always tell the candidate in the beginning, you need to make 4 hours of fundraising calls. Jarvis, I don't like fundraising. I said, you don't need to run for office if you don't like fundraising. Don't waste my time, don't waste the constituents' time. You need to make about 3 or 4 hours calls a day, or don't waste my time. And you also need to knock on doors 3 or 4 hours. So if they're not knocking on doors 4 hours and they're not making fundraising calls for 4 hours, you're doing something wrong. So 8 hours out of your day, which means you're working about 16 hours a day. 8 hours out of your day have to be spent door knocking and making phone calls. I mean, door knocking and making fundraising calls are very, very important. Fundraising, since we do so much fundraising, if I'm making a fundraising plan, I'm looking at 5% identity, 3% solicit, 2% recognize, and 90% cultivated relationships. Before I do any fundraising act, I have to know that person, I have to know what they value. So make 90% of fundraising is cultivating and building a relationship first. And we know the big donors want access, while the mid donors want to be part of something social or be a part of something that they really understand about an issue that's important to them. And it usually takes 12 touches. Let me repeat this stat. It takes 12 touches of e-blast before non-donor begins giving money on average. So volunteer leaders, do not feel bad thinking, I sent all these emails out and still nothing's happening. It takes about 10 to 12 times after that person sends 10 to 12 emails, 10 to 12 touches. Maybe it's a text message, maybe it's a phone call before they give. So it takes time. Again, 90% cultivate a relationship. We can't look at someone as someone who's just behind an email address. That's a person that values something, and we have to figure out what they value before we target them. The great thing about Sister District is campaign cycle and neighborhood organizing all into one. Neil is our neighborhood organizer. He's our organizing part. And then our political department is our campaign cycle. Campaign, short term, mobilizing volunteers, and achieving a win number. Neighborhood organizing, longer term, organizing communities, building your base, increasing participation, and so on and so on. The great thing about the Sister District, it marries those two. Organizing and political, the longer term and short term. Because we don't stop. We can't stop because we won't stop with Sister District. So we're always going on a long term, but we also had a short term on winning campaigns in the middle of the long term, community organizing and political organizing, and we married the two as one. Our National Phone Bank program is a joint project with our organizing department, our political department, and our operations department. So we see National Phone Bank, and phone banking is very, very important, and no one does it better than us. I will say that to any organization. Nobody does phone banking better than Sister by far. We're the best. And we will continue to do it as we grow our National Phone Bank into one of the best phone banking programs that this country has ever seen. And we continue growing it because we know door knocking and phone banking wins campaigns. And again, thank you. And I will go to the next slide. Thank you.
So just a couple of examples from our campaign toolbox. We offer campaign managers and candidates materials like campaign plans. We have sample plans from previous campaigns that Jarvis and I have worked, and previous Sister District candidates that we have that they can take a look at and to help develop their own. We have other campaign plans from Wellstone, which is a great democratic training organization. They have a wealth of knowledge that is really helpful to some of these first-time campaign managers. We have a calendar template letting people know like what portion of the calendar should they be spending doing ID calls, when do we hit GOTV, and what do we do during GOTV. And then we have campaign prospectuses, which are really helpful when sending to larger organizations that may be endorsing. Fundraisers may request them. And it's just a really great tool to offer campaign managers, especially if they're first-time managers, to give them a little bit of insight and guidance.
Thank you, Taylor. I have about 6 minutes, so I'm going to go over one more thing. I want to do a little bit Q&A. I get excited when I'm talking about campaigns. I come from a training background. So Wendy could die this. I'm gonna go first and then let Taylor piggyback, and then we're going to go to quick Q&A. So I might go a little bit over Mara for about 3 or 4 minutes. So sorry, because I want to get at least 2 questions. Wendy Goditis. This is was the true difference makers in Wendy Goditis being reelected to her office. We made 55% of her campaign total dials. We reached out to almost 20,000 voters. The most important part, Neil will tell you this is the most important stat. We identified 861 voters. She won by 821 votes. So all those 861 people were identified. What's the difference between her winning by close to 2% of her election? And again, let's talk about fundraising. 16% of her early donations, and we raised almost $40,000 for Wendy Goditis. The most important part of us working with Wendy Goditis was campaign service. And our campaign manager will tell you that. If we go to the next slide, please. Wendy paid media, we helped her, as I said in the beginning, we helped her look at her paid media strategy, her TV buy, and said, it's not gonna work. You gotta take some chunks out of the TV buy and put it into voter contact strategy. We helped her create her voter universe. We helped her analyze her universe. We helped her with campaign plan development. And we also helped advise her on communication strategy and having the right message, again, at the right time to the right voter. Next slide, please. Quick quote from her campaign and about the deep work that, again, she said we had a deep understanding of campaigns and she actually listened to us and she's very coachable and she understands the importance of field organizing, door knocking, and phone banking to win campaigns. Anything to add to Wendy, the great Wendy Goditis, Taylor?
Yeah, this is a great example of a campaign and a campaign manager really embracing Jarvis and I's support. Liz and I talked every day. She talked to Jarvis every other day. We were in constant communication, and that shows in their effectiveness of their GOTV program. Jarvis and I helped Liz design it, help find the pockets that the coordinated campaign wasn't covering, other organizations weren't covering, and helped Liz build out a sustainable program to ensure that they were reaching every voter necessary to win.
So we will take 2 questions, Mara. You're the boss, Mara. 2 questions before we end.
Thanks for Ore for collecting them. Jarvis, a couple of questions for you. Let me see some good ones since we only have 2. It seems that Republicans are so much better at sound bites and key messaging. Can Sister District help with simple key messaging for candidates? And in addition, how do we counter the GOP lies?
Yeah, so great question. So we're going to counter the lies by, again, local organizing, local messaging. So we're going to work with the campaign, number 1, to have a great campaign plan that has a great local organizing messaging strategy. So every message is different in the campaign. Every neighborhood is different. Every block is different. Every precinct is different. Every county is different. Every state is different. So we can't look at every area as the same. So we're going to work with the campaigns that have the best communication and messaging strategy that actually talks to voters about what they value. So again, we're not going to worry about the Republicans' lies because first they have to value the candidate, understand the candidate or the person running for election or re-election. Then once we have that person, the person actually understand the candidate, and you're speaking about what they value, then we can go into maybe going a little negative on the Republicans and pushing them back, but we're not there yet. Again, it takes months to talk about yourself before. It's almost like the movie Braveheart when he said, wait till the right time to attack the enemy. Same thing with messaging and going negative on Republicans. You wait at the right time. If you're running a great campaign, you're going to know the right time to go negative.
Awesome. And then our last question, and there's lots of great questions, so sorry we can't get to all of them. But Jarvis, in recent cycles, what kind of candidate messaging has been most effective for GOTV and for fundraising?
Great question. Going back to messaging, so it starts with, again, the phone banking. And let's say I'm working with Neil and Neil's like, this phone bank went great. These are some of the main issues that the volunteers got from the received from the phone bank. So I take that information from Neil, bring it back to the campaign and say, these are the 5 top issues. So I'm going to listen to the voters first. So I'm going to take all the issues from the voters that matters to them and about what they value. Then I'm going to take it back to the campaign and speak to the campaign about their message and strategy. And that could be the same with fundraising. But fundraising is a little bit different. Just talking about voter contact strategy, it's about what the voter thinks is best and it's about what they value. But both the person that's donating and the person that's voting, you always got to hit the heart of what they value. They're equally the same. If I'm speaking, let's say we have one of our volunteers speaking of our phone bank, we need to donate to this area in Detroit to this candidate because there's so many people in this community without jobs. They're not even making $15 an hour. Then they speak about, someone always taught me, facts tell, stories fail. If you have a good story, people listen. That's why Netflix is so powerful. Netflix has really good stories. So you got to have a great story and a great message to reel that person in for them to understand. I could talk to you about all the policy points you want, but people get caught up in policy, then they get confused. You don't want to confuse people. If you hear a good story about what somebody values, then that person is going to understand it more because you understand the story a lot better than policy.
Awesome. And Jarvis, you get one more question. It's your lucky day. Does HQ work with every campaign manager and how closely?
Great question. So we work very close. We work closely with every campaign manager. We have bi-monthly calls every 2 weeks with our campaign managers. Just we're going over what this was Sister District. We made X number of phone calls. We have raised X number of dollars, and then we're almost doing a verbal SWOT analysis of the campaign. We're talking to the campaign to find weak points. No campaign is perfect. You're going to have areas we can be the most support. For Ross Tyler, we knew we needed to help them actually write plans. With Wendy Godidas, we knew we had to help her with paid media strategy. With Brianna Sewell, we know in the beginning we had to help her write her finance plan because she didn't have a finance director yet. So we're working with the campaign to find out where we can be the most helpful, and where we find out we can be the most helpful, and that's what we focus our campaign services on for that particular campaign. And every campaign is different. And this year we're going to add a couple different tidbits. For example, we're going to have new campaign managers onboarding calls where for an hour we're going to onboard on. Have you have your phone bank set up? Do you have a canvassing program set up? Do you have a plan? Do you need to help us? You need us to help you write the plan. So we're going to have separate onboarding calls for an hour with the campaign manager just to make sure they have everything they need. And we're giving them free consulting advice again. We make sure they have everything they need to run the best campaign possible. Is it going to be perfect? And again, we're advising people. We're not telling them what to do. That's very, very important. I'm not managing the campaign. Even if I was managing the campaign, the candidate could say, Jarvis, I don't want to do it this way. Then I tell the campaign manager, the candidate, you're going to lose this. I was very vocal with it. I'll tell them what's on my mind because we have to be, because you're advising. But we're advising, that's a little bit different. I just can't tell them what's on my mind. I can tell them what they need to do to win and lose. And I said, if you don't do this, this is not a roadmap to victory.
Awesome. Do we have time for one more question, Mara?
Okay.
Yes, good. Awesome. How does placing TV ads work? And how do we make sure that the ads being placed are effective?
Good question. So you're looking at TV ads in two different plans. You have network ads where are more expensive. That's NBC, that's Fox, that's CBS. Those are a lot more expensive than cable buys. Cable buys like Comcast, Xfinity, that's like Lifetime. For instance, I ran a campaign where we did Judge Judy. That's when she was very popular. We ran ads in the morning targeting seniors for Judge Judy at like 6 in the morning. They're like, why are you running ads at 6 in the morning? I said, the seniors are up watching Judge Judy. That's what we're running the ads. So when you're talking about TV ads, it's very important to have a separate program for just network and then a separate program from cable. But if I had to start a program, if I was running a low budget campaign, I'm going to make a cable buy because they're cheaper than TV buys. And again, you don't run a TV buy unless you understand that community that you're targeting. It's not interesting like voter targeting, but it's similar. You're working with that media company to target. You can target cable buys better than network buys. Let's say if I'm doing a cable buy, I want to target everyone in this geographical area because I know these people are more heavily Democrat. And we're going to run this ad about education and broadband access in this area because I know this area is affected, or this area is affected by tornadoes. We should learn something about the environment in this area. So it's about voter targeting, about finding out what the voter values, and then working to have a really great commercial. When I worked with the judge and he was chopping the wood, and then he had his judge grew up on is very different because they saw that judge as someone that's like them. I have a judge that's chopping wood, and I read other commercials again. The commercials actually got to be fun. It has to be memorable. Like I work with a candidate that did a commercial with her 8-year-old son. That was very valuable. De Blasio, before I end, De Blasio, when he was running in 2013, he was third place, maybe 2 or 3 weeks before election. That was the time I was managing a city council person. He ran a ad with his African American son, because Blasio again is a white mayor from New York. He ran an ad with his African American son with his Afro. That's one of the best ads I ever seen. The Blasio campaign completely changed off that one commercial with his son, and de Blasio won. At the right time, he started trending the last 3 weeks of the campaign, and he became the mayor of New York City off of that one ad with his son. So it just takes that little posting. It could be fun. It could be innovative. It could be something different. It could be catchy. Yeah, Dante. See, she remembers Dante. See, she remembers that ad. That ad was about 8 or 9 years ago, but she remembers that ad from the chat. That one ad you remember, you have a good ad if you can remember 8 years ago. And I can't remember the Netflix show that I watched 3 weeks ago, but I can remember that one ad. That tells you the power of speaking to the voters and finding something that they value and targeting them on an emotional level.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that, Jarvis. I know we didn't get to a lot of questions. Maybe Jarvis and I can include them in our next political dispatch, but I'm handing it over to